obviously a bike can't literally speak to you. It can't physically talk, but I am a strong believer that a bicycle, through its design, its material choice, and its overall aesthetic, can offer suggestions on how it should be ridden and offer clues as to its intended use. How's that for an intro? In this video, a close look at the new Ritchey Montebello endurance road bike, all the things that I like and dislike about it, and I'll share some experiences that I've had with it so far as well. So for the past couple of weeks, I've been riding around on this, the brand new Ritchey Montebello. Now this was a bike that was teased on Fergus' account. He was riding a prototype of this bike, but then more recently, earlier this year at Sea Otter Classic, I think they officially unveiled the bike. Now when the first images kind of surfaced, to me it felt a little bit confusing as to what it actually was. It certainly had a vintage kind of European appeal. I believe there was literally a baguette sticking out of one of the racks at the display. So right off the bat, I kind of want to discuss what this bike actually is. Now in 2024, by all accounts, comparing this bike to a lot of other modern road bikes, this certainly falls into the endurance road bike category. As far as Ritchey bikes go, it's meant to sit somewhere in between the more race-oriented Road Logic and the more gravel-focused Outback. Now I'm trying to do this video a little bit more organically, get off the script a little bit, but I'll put on the screen right now a couple of comparisons of other similar endurance road bikes. And you can just see how similar the geometries are. In a lot of cases, the silhouettes are nearly identical, with the geometry numbers lining up almost exactly. Generally speaking, with respect to other endurance road bikes on the market right now, the Montebello tends to have a slightly higher stack with just slightly longer chainstays. Both things sort of suggesting that this is a bike that's meant for comfort and long days in the saddle, and less about really responsive and snappy handling. Now, that's not at all to say that the bike is a slouch. When you look at the trail figures of a lot of similar bikes, you'll find that the Montebello is pretty on par. So while the Montebello is slightly higher in stack, touch lower in the bottom bracket, and slightly longer in the rear, it definitely doesn't feel like it's stepping into that gravel category. I think at its core, the Montebello is a dedicated road bike. It's just meant for somebody who wants to ride road in a more comfortable position and who likely doesn't care as much about weight or aerodynamics. Now on the channel here, we are very gravel and adventure bike focused, but I do put out the occasional mountain bike and road bike specific content. And so a couple of the noteworthy extremes of what I've been testing lately are the Rita Esprit and the Polygon Helios. Now these are both dedicated road race bikes. They're lightweight, they're carbon, they're fully integrated, all that stuff. And while I do honestly believe that both of those bikes are faster than this bike, I believe equally that the Montebello is just orders of magnitude more comfortable than those race-oriented bikes. Now so far I already recognize that this is kind of different from a typical bike sauce review, in that normally I'll kind of dive right into the specs and the stats first, and then talk about how the bike feels later on. In this case, however, I just feel like the numbers aren't that important with respect to how the bike actually feels. Now I'll put the geo charts up right now, and I'll have a couple links down in the description for some other similar comparisons. But fundamentally, I think the way you want to think about the Montebello is that, again, it's an endurance road bike, really tailored pretty far towards the endurance side of the spectrum. The last endurance road bike that I rode for an extended period of time was my Specialized Roubaix SL4. And so in my mind, I kind of know what an endurance road bike is supposed to feel like. It's supposed to be really fast, but just more comfortable than like a typical race bike. The Montebello, on the other hand, isn't really that. It's not super fast. It doesn't have like a ton of get up and go when you really stand on the pedals. But like I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, the bike isn't really intended for that. I think this bike really just encourages you to sort of sit in the saddle, find your all-day pace, and just kind of go. It motors along really nicely on the flats. And I've been climbing Turnbull Canyon for the last 15 minutes or so, and while I am out of breath, as you can probably tell, I'm not any more fatigued than when I'm on, say, like a more race-oriented road bike. I think the Ritchey Montebello is for the cyclist who wants to do a lot of road, who wants to put in long miles, but who's going to prioritize all-day comfort over all-out speed and performance. Now I know the natural question is, of course, how much does it weigh? Again, it's one of those parameters that I didn't even really think to measure when I first got the bike. I'll put the exact number up on the screen right now. It's definitely not light by modern road bike standards, but it's also not advertised to be. Of course, it uses Ritchey's triple butted Logic tubing. It's got a brand new carbon fork, which allows for internal routing of a dynamo light. But other than that, everything is externally routed. As with all Ritchey bikes, it uses a straight 1 1/8 steer for additional compliance. And to me, this is a bike that's not using steel just to be cool. I'm actually kind of tired of people using the blanket phrase of steel is real, because in my experience, not all steel is in fact real. Stupid. What I mean is that some bikes don't use as high quality as steel. It might just be double butted or even straight gauge and of lower quality. And bikes like those are not going to have that buttery feel that's synonymous with steel. Now, Ritchey, on the other hand, is sort of at the opposite end of that spectrum. They pride themselves on their triple butted steel tubing, which is not the most expensive tubing that you can buy, but it's highly engineered to offer a great feeling bike that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. So for that reason, of course, the bike is going to weigh more than a carbon, lightweight road race thing. But at the same time, the sort of vibration damping and the actual road feel that the Ritchey frame provides just can't really be matched by its carbon counterparts. Now, what I love about the Ritchey frames, in addition to, the simple design and like the non-proprietary stuff, is really just the way that the bike feels when it comes to vibration damping. Now, I kind of raved about this in the Ritchey Outback videos that I've done previously, but on the Outbacks, I've never run a tire that's narrower than like a 43 millimeter that themselves provide a ton of compliance in the ride experience. So I think getting on the Montebello is much more testament to the frame design, because on this bike, I'm not running giant tires. I'm running relatively narrow 700C by 35 mil tires. And so of course it's going to be a rougher ride than say the Outback. But again, compared to like a carbon road bike with similar sized tires, the Montebello just has a nice muted feel to it. Now, the way I kind of like to describe it in my mind is the Montebello kind of like rumbles over imperfections with this kind of smooth and muted feel to it. Whereas some of the other carbon road bikes that I've ridden kind of like chatter over everything. It almost feels like you're skipping over every little imperfection in the road. Of course it feels stiffer, of course it feels faster. But again, a lot of people aren't necessarily going after that, purely performance driven design. Now for me, as I get older, I'll be 40 in a couple weeks, I'm just not as flexible as I used to be. I'm also not as interested in flying down hills at top speed. I don't really care about the latest aero advances in road cycling. And I think a lot of you fit into that same category. And so the endurance road bike section tends to appeal to people like you and I. But then when you look around at the offerings in that endurance road category, there's still bikes that are kind of meant to look like road race bikes. So, they've got carbon parts, they're all integrated, they look very sleek, but they're just more comfortable to ride geometrically. But then when you get on one of those carbon endurance road bikes, physically, the feedback that you get from the road is still relatively harsh compared to, a nice steel bike like the Montebello. So I do apologize, this is supposed to be unbiased review, I'm just supposed to present the facts, but I have been selling the bike kind of hard, and that's because I really enjoy riding it. So what are the things that I'm not so fond of on this bike? I do think the sizing is a little bit strange. If you look more carefully at some of the comparisons that I put up, in many cases a medium-sized Montebello kind of lines up to what I would consider to be a large bike in other brands. Now, I'm not very tall, I'm 5'8" with relatively short legs, so I really wanted to be demoing the small. I generally sit right between a small and a medium when it comes to road bikes. And because I think the Montebello is slightly large for its size, if that makes sense, the medium bike that I've been demoing does just feel a little bit large. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's too big. I've got the fit generally where I like it. I've got the saddle at the right height, and I've got maybe 4 inches of seat post exposed. One thing that I did have to do, which I almost never have to do, is to actually lower the stem. Because this demo unit actually came with a bunch of spacers under the stem, and with this already really tall stack, I actually felt like the handlebars were too high, which I'm not sure I've experienced on a drop bar bike before. Again, not really complaints, just things to note. I haven't mentioned tire clearances. The stated clearance is 36 millimeters if you're going to run fenders, and 700C by 40 millimeters if you're not running fenders. Looking at the fork, I'm certain you can get a much wider tire than 40 mil in there. The rear triangle is probably where it's going to get a little congested. You might be able to get away with like a 42 or 43. I haven't confirmed the max tire size that you can fit. But again, once you get into those tire width sort of clearance debates, you're generally talking about sort of gravel bikes and all-road bikes, which this bike is not. Less important probably is the group set that I'm demoing this bike with. It is Shimano 105 Di2. It works great. I made a lot of comparisons between this group set and the Chinese wheel top group set that I recently did a video for. As far as electronic group sets with hydraulic disc brakes, honestly, I feel like 105 is the way to go. I've always felt that 105, even at the mechanical level, always just kind of maximize that value per dollar. And I really just don't have a need for anything fancier than this. As far as the gearing goes, I've been running 50-34 chain rings up front, which I haven't done in years. The chain rings look huge to me, and in the back I've got, I believe it's 11-34 tooth cassette. So I've got, at the lowest end, I have a 1-to-1 ratio, which I generally like to have a lower climbing gear than that. But so far, you know, even up Turnbull, it hasn't been a huge issue. Okay, so I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Let me know if you have any questions about my experience with the bike so far. And I'm also really curious to see how this sort of more informal format lands with you guys. Let me know if it was too rambly. Let me know if you appreciate the more structured, scripted videos. I'm always open to constructive criticism, so let me know your honest thoughts down below. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't already, see you next time.